When I found out my parents had stolen $68,000, the money I'd been saving for my 6-year-old daughter's life-saving surgery, the world didn't crash all at once. It cracked slowly, like glass under pressure. If it's meant to be, she'll survive, my sister said, her tone flat, as if we were talking about the weather. Mom added softly, "We really needed the money, Lydia." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I just stood there, frozen. Because sometimes silence is the only thing holding you together. 3 hours later, their perfect little world started to unravel. The hospital receptionist smiled politely, like this was just another Tuesday. "Whenever you're ready," she said, sliding the card reader across the counter. I was ready, or I thought I was. The card clicked in. The screen blinked once, twice, then a small beep. Declined. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because laughter was the only sound that kept me from breaking in half. "Can we try again?" I asked. We tried again. It failed again. The receptionist's smile tightened a little, like she'd seen this before but didn't know what to say. "Maybe call your bank?" I nodded, pulling out my phone. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped it. The banking app took forever to open, the little spinning blue circle mocking me, taking its sweet time like it didn't care that a child's life was on hold. When it finally loaded, the number on the screen didn't make sense. 00 not low, not missing. Empty. For a second, I thought I'd tapped the wrong account. I backed out, went back in. Same result. 0. Behind me, my daughter Ivy sat swinging her small feet against the waiting room chair, humming a little tune to herself. Calm, innocent, completely unaware that our whole world had just collapsed. I scrolled through the transaction list. Dozens of transfers, tiny amounts at first, all outgoing. My brain couldn't even process the numbers. Just the endless stream of them. "Everything okay?" the receptionist asked gently. "Yeah," I said, but it didn't sound like me. "Just a mix-up." She nodded. "If you can make the deposit by 9 a.m. tomorrow, we can hold your daughter's surgery slot. After that, it goes to the next patient. I'll fix it," I said. "By morning." I even smiled. That numb, automatic kind of smile people wear when they're bleeding and pretending not to notice. The drive home was a blur. The hospital lights turned into streaks on the highway. The receptionist's voice echoed in my head. By 9 a.m., I called the bank on speaker while Ivy asked softly from the back seat, "Mommy, can we stop for pancakes?" I said we'd make them at home. Hold music played for 10 long minutes before someone finally answered. The representative sounded tired, polite, distant. She confirmed the transfers. Several of them, all authorized. "They were processed normally," she said. "If you believe they're fraudulent, we can open a case first thing tomorrow." "Can you stop them?" I asked, voice breaking. "Reverse them?" "I'm afraid not tonight, ma'am. The transactions have already cleared. You'll need to file a report in the morning. Tomorrow." Everything was always tomorrow. When we finally pulled into the parking lot, Ivy was still humming. "Can we still have pancakes?" she asked. "Sure," I said, with sprinkles. At home, I dumped my purse on the counter and tried to breathe. The apartment smelled like laundry detergent and crayons. Warm, safe smells that didn't match the panic crawling under my skin. Ivy opened her coloring book, sat at the table, and began to hum again. She always hummed when she felt safe. I wasn't sure where safety lived anymore. I opened the banking app again, hoping for a miracle. Still 0. Still gone. That money, every cent meant for her surgery, had vanished. I heard the surgeon's voice in my head, steady and calm. "As long as we move quickly. The outlook is excellent. Quickly." I grabbed my keys. "Ivy, get your shoes and your bunny," I said. She didn't ask questions. Just obeyed quietly, the way kids do when they can feel something's wrong. By the time I buckled her into her booster seat, she was already half asleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit under her chin. The night road was long and empty. Streetlights slid across her small, peaceful face as I drove. My heart felt like it was beating out of rhythm, every pulse a reminder of the clock ticking toward morning. I turned onto my parents' street. Their house glowed under the porch light, driveway full, contractor's van parked by the curb. Inside, I could see movement through the kitchen window. When I stepped through the door, the smell hit first. Fresh paint, sawdust, new countertops. It smelled like renovation, like money. Mom turned from the counter, mug in hand. "Oh, Lydia, you scared me. Why didn't you call?" Dad stood beside the contractor, phone in hand, discussing lighting fixtures. My sister Samantha leaned against the fridge, scrolling through her phone like she had all the time in the world. I told them the card had declined, that the money was gone. Dad frowned. "Banks mess up all the time," Mom sighed. "You really stress too much, honey." Samantha didn't even look up. "I need 25,000, I said quietly. "I can put 10 on credit cards, but I need 15 tonight, just until the bank fixes it." They exchanged looks, that small, wordless glance that tells you everything before anyone speaks. Mom finally said, "We just spent what we had. Everything's tied up in the kitchen remodel." She gestured toward the half-finished cabinets like they were something noble, something worth sacrificing a child for. I stared at her. "You just started this morning." Dad cleared his throat. "We've been planning for years." "Years," I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Then came the comments, quiet, sharp, and cruel in their calmness. 70,000 is a lot to throw away if it's not guaranteed," Mom said. "If it were really urgent, insurance would cover it," Dad added. And then my sister, still scrolling, is murmured, "Maybe it's a sign. If she's meant to live, she'll live." They said it like wisdom, like comfort, like faith. And that's when I felt it. My jaw tightening, my heartbeat slowing, every nerve going still. "She's 6. Samantha sighed. "You always make it sound so dramatic. People live with health stuff all the time." I looked at her. She was wearing a new gold bracelet. I wondered if the paint fumes were giving me hallucinations. "I'm not asking for help," I said. "Just a loan. I'll pay it back in a week." Mom set her mug down. "We really can't. Everything's already committed to tile to paint to a contractor currently drilling in my daughter's future." I nodded because words stopped working. I stepped back outside. The air smelled like dust and wet grass. From the porch, I could see Ivy still asleep in the car, porch light reflecting off the window. I stood there a moment, making sure she was safe before I walked down the driveway until the noise of the saw dulled. My hands were still shaking. I opened the banking app one more time, scrolled through the transfers. At first I didn't notice the timestamps, just the pattern. Same amounts, same spacing, like someone had planned it. Then I saw the hours late, past midnight. All on the nights Ivy and I were sleeping in my parents' guest room. The realization hit like a body blow. My breath caught. The world went small and bright around the edges. It happened here in this house while we were asleep under their roof. The screen light painted my palms green. Behind me, laughter floated from the kitchen. Mom's bright and easy. I stared at the phone and it clicked together all at once. The missing money, the new cabinets, the timing. A single clean thought cut through the noise. It was them. And then just as quickly, no, it can't be. I wanted to believe the second one. It needed to. I looked toward the car. 2 small shoes on the back seat. Ivy's face lit by the dash, and then I drove home in silence, holding on to that second thought like it was oxygen. You know those moments when you can feel Vestry turning on you? Like some invisible narrator just flipped a page you didn't give permission to? I used to think families broke all at once. Turns out they do it in installments. Samantha was born when I was 2, and apparently that was the day the son decided to pick a favorite. She cried prettier, smiled bigger, and somehow made even tantrums look rehearsed. Mom said she just has presence. Dad called her little spark. I was the helper. If Samantha was the painting, I was the frame that kept it from sliding off the wall. By high school, I'd perfected invisibility. Good grades, no drama. If someone forgot to pick me up, I waited quietly until they remembered. That kind of discipline sticks with you. It's the muscle memory of being overlooked. Adulthood didn't fix it. Samantha stayed home, bouncing between projects. Mom bragged about her entrepreneurial spirit. I called iTunes employment, but only in my head. I worked, paid bills, learned to like frozen dinners. If my parents noticed, they didn't mention it. Why would they? Their favorite was still in the house, still the glitter in their otherwise beige lives. Then I met Ivy's father. He wasn't the worst mistake I ever made, but he's definitely on the leaderboard. Charming, funny, allergic to responsibility. One of those men who talks like a future and acts like avocation. When I got pregnant, have vanished with the efficiency of a magician. Mom said, "You can still fix this." Dad said, "Don't ruin your life." Samantha said nothing, just smiled like she was watching the world's slowest train wreck. I didn't fix it. I had Ivy. She was small, red, furious at the world, and the first person to look at me like I was enough. Then came the medical charts. Heart, lungs, words I couldn't pronounce, followed by numbers that sounded like countdowns. Hospitals became our second home. My parents visited once, brought flowers from a gas station and a lecture about how love doesn't pay bills. I said, "Thanks." I didn't mean it. For years it was just me and Ivy, and a carousel of doctors. I'd go from spreadsheets to waiting rooms, from invoices to IV drips. I learned how to fake calm, smile, nod, sign the form, cry later in the parking lot. I was good at it. Practice makes perfect. Then last month, a doctor with kind eyes said a word I hadn't heard before. Curable. Not manageable, not long-term, curable, a new surgery, experimental, expensive, promising. Insurance shrugged. The quote, $70,000, my checking account. A joke. So, I did what I always do. Worked harder, refinanced the house, sold the car, cashed, out my retirement account, because apparently I didn't need a future as long as Ivy had one. When the last transfer cleared, I stared at the number in my bank app, 68,000, and cried so hard my phone blurred. Not because of the money, but because for the first time, survival looked like an option. The surgeon called the next day. They had an opening next week. I said yes before he finished the sentence. For 3 nights, I actually slept. Then we packed up and drove to my parents' house. They wanted to see Ivy before the big day. That's what Mom said on the phone. I was naive enough to think it was affection. When we arrived, everything was too cheerful. Smiles a little too wide. Voices too bright. Mom hugged Ivy like she was auditioning for Best Grandma. Dad asked about the surgery costs, and Samantha called it an investment in hope, which sounded like something you'd print on a candle. Ryan scrolled through his phone and said, "You could have doubled it in crypto." I smiled back thin. Dinner was takeout pretending to be homemade. The conversation was the same. Polite, shallow, exhausting. When Ivy started yawning, I said we'd turn in early. The guest room smelled like lemon cleaner and someone else's idea of comfort. I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter. Ryan was still there, screen glow on his face. "Late night work?" I asked. He grinned. Something like that. I woke once around 1, the faint hum of voices, a laugh, a strip of light under the door. Too tired to care, I told myself it was nothing. In the morning, Mom made pancakes, everyone acted normal, and my phone was on the counter, just not exactly where I'd left it. I didn't think twice. Why would I? If someone had told me that betrayal makes a sound, I'd have guessed thunder. Turns out it's quieter. Just the click of a car door shutting behind you when you can't think of where else to go. I drove away from my parents' house on autopilot. Ivy was asleep in the back seat. Her rabbit slumped against the window, and I kept my eyes on the road like it was the only straight line left in my life. It had to be them. I knew it. But my brain still tried to play defense. Maybe a hacker, maybe a glitch, and then it hit me. The phone. I'd left it charging in their kitchen. My passcode, 6 digits, Ivy's birthday. The same number I used for everything. Because who can remember 12 passwords when you're juggling bills and oxygen levels? They didn't even have to be smart. They just had to be curious. I gripped the wheel tighter. "Nice job, Lydia," I said out loud because sarcasm was the only language I still spoke fluently. I called Tara before I could lose my nerve. She answered on the second ring. "Tara, it's me. What happened?" I told her. The money, the surgery, the deadline, the maybe parents. There was a pause, and then bring Ivy here. "You can't drag her to a police station. I'll keep her for a bit." I wanted to argue to say no, but the words jammed somewhere behind my teeth. I just said thank you and hung up. Tara lived 10 minutes away in a small house that always smelled like vanilla candles and clean laundry. Proof that some people actually had control over their lives. She opened the door before I even knocked. One look at me and she pulled Evie into a hug first. "You tired, kiddo?" Ivy nodded, clutching her rabbit. "Good. You and Mr. Bunny can hang out here while your mom does superhero business." I forced a smile. "Just for a little while." "Okay." Ivy nodded again. She was braver than me. Tara squeezed my shoulder. "Go." The police station was half asleep. Fluorescent lights hummed like they were also tired of being here. The officer at the desk looked about 12. His name tag said Hernandez. And his eyes said, "I've heard worse. I laid it all out. 68,000 gone in 12 little transfers." He typed without interrupting, the clack of the keyboard counting down what was left of my composure. "Do you suspect anyone?" he asked finally. I opened my mouth and closed it again. "My parents," I said. "Probably." He nodded like that wasn't even the strangest thing he'd heard this week. "Could anyone else know your phone password?" "Ivy's birthday." I said, "Everyone knows it." Then quieter, "Everyone who matters." He didn't lecture me. He just kept typing. Somehow that was worse. I printed a few forms, slid them across the counter. "Here's your case number. Fraud division will call once they pull the transfers. Keep your phone handy because that was the problem, officer." I always kept my phone handy. I left with the papers folded in my pocket like proof that I hadn't imagined any of this. On the drive back, I called the bank's fraud line. Same hold music, same polite voice, different outcome. I gave them the police report number. They froze my account. Said an investigator would trace the money, maybe recover some of it. "It'll take time," the rep said, which was apparently the official slogan of my life. By the time I hung up, I was shaking too hard to keep driving. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot, left the engine running, and opened my laptop. There's a special kind of humiliation that comes from begging an algorithm for help. Instant loan forms, payday advances, credit card applications. I filled them out like prayers. Denied. Denied. Pending review, which was corporate for no. I checked my cards. I could scrape together 10,000 if I maxed everything and pretended the word interest didn't exist. 10 down, 15 to go. My head hurt. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Somewhere behind me, a shopping cart hit another car, and I jumped like it was gunfire. I drove to Tara's because there was nowhere else left to go. Her Porsche light was on. Through the window, I saw Ivy on the rug building a lopsided tower of blocks while Tara pretended to read a magazine. When I knocked, Tara came to the door holding her phone. "Any luck?" I shook my head. 10,000? That's all I can get. I'm still short 15. Tara didn't say anything for a moment. Then she opened her banking app, tapped a few times, and looked up. "It's done," she said. "What?" "I sent it. 15,000. It's for Ivy." "Don't argue, Tara. I can't. You can and you will. Pay me back when the bank fixes it. Or don't." "I don't care." I stared at her, half relieved, half ready to cry. "You didn't even think about it." "Of course I did," she said. "It took 3 taps." I laughed, a sound that hurt coming out. "You're insane." "Maybe," she said. "Now go." Ivy looked up from her tower, eyes heavy with sleep. "Are we going home?" "Yeah, baby," I said. "We're going home." Back at the apartment, I tucked her into bed. She was out before I could finish smoothing the blanket. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my banking app one more time, and waited. A notification blinked across the screen. Incoming transfer. $15,000. For a second, I just stared at it. Then I laughed again, quiet, shaky, the kind that leaks through your ribs instead of your throat. 6,000 stolen, 25 salvaged, one little girl still breathing beside me. I collected even for the night. By 8:30 the next morning, I was sitting in the clinic's parking lot, gripping the steering wheel like it was a flotation device. Inside me phone sat exactly $25,000, $10 scraped from my own cards, 15 cent by Tara. Every time I looked at the number, I half expected it to vanish again. The glass doors slid open when I walked in. Same receptionist as before. Same too bright smile. She probably thought I just needed a day to shuffle some accounts. "Good morning," she said. "Ready to take care of that deposit?" Ready? What a word. I handed over my card. The machine blinked, thought about it, and then chirped its little digital approval. Paid. Done. The sound was so small it shouldn't have mattered, but almost cried anyway. The receptionist printed a receipt and said, "Congratulations. Your daughter's slot is confirmed for Tuesday." She looked genuinely happy for me. I envied her. I stepped back outside and sat on the curb, letting the cold bite through my jacket until the shaking stopped. I told myself I should feel relief, but all I felt was borrowed time. On the drive home, my phone rang. Mom, flashing on the screen. I should have let it go to voicemail, but old habits die like cockroaches, slowly and with too much noise. "Hello." She didn't waste a second. "How could you call the police on us? No greeting, no guilt, just outrage." I laughed, which probably didn't help. "I didn't call them on you, Mom. I reported a crime. You're unbelievable. After everything we've done." "What, like steal me daughter's surgery fund? That's ridiculous," she snapped. "We don't have your money." Then Dad's voice cut in from somewhere near the receiver. "You're ruining this family, Lydia. Over that medical nonsense. Medical nonsense." That one almost made him laugh again. I said, "It's a life-saving surgery, Dad, for Ivy," who muttered something about me being dramatic. Mom took the phone back. "You keep throwing money into that child like it's a wishing well. Maybe this is a sign to stop a sign, right? From the universe." I bit my tongue so hard it tasted like metal. "You know what?" I said, "If it's a sign, I'll take it as one. A sign to never speak to you again." I hung up before she could find something worse to say. For a few seconds, the car was silent, except for me own breathing and the sound of Ivy's audio book playing in the back seat. Then I turned up the volume until I couldn't hear myself think. Days later, the police called. Not the kid who took my statement. A detective this time, Miss Alden. "We've traced most of the transfers," he said, voice steady, professional. "Can you come in?" Those words always sound casual in movies. In real life, they tighten something around your throat. At the station, he showed me a sheet of paper covered in lines and numbers I barely understood. All I saw was one name, or rather a username, ShadowVibe89. He tapped it. "That's where most of the money ended up." Ring any bells? It did. Ryan's gamer tag. My sister's boyfriend. The crypto genius. The man who'd smiled at me over takeout while my daughter fell asleep 10F'd away. I stared at the printout. "That's him." The detective nodded like he'd been expecting me to say it. "We'll follow up." Follow up sounded polite. I wanted it to sound like handcuffs. I walked out into the parking lot and sat in the car with the engine off, my hands shaking on the wheel. The betrayal didn't even surprise me anymore. It just settled, heavy and permanent, like dust you stopped trying to clean. 2 days after that, the detective called again. They'd subpoenaed the exchange. The account was Ryan's, verified with his mail, his ID photo. Half the money had already been converted back to dollars and sent to my parents' account. The kitchen renovation, the contractor, the timing, all of it lined up like dominoes falling in slow motion. "We've got them, Miss Alden," he said. My name sounded foreign in his mouth. I hung up and sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The next morning, the bank called. They had verified the police report and approved a provisional credit. "Temporary funds," the rep said, "until the case is resolved." I didn't ask how long temporary meant. Temporary was fine. Temporary was enough. That night, I paid the first round off pre-surgery costs. The invoice total looked like a phone number, but at least my balance wasn't zero anymore. When Ivy finally fell asleep, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. The room smelled like lavender shampoo, and the faint sweetness of the syrup from breakfast still on her pillow. Her chest rose and fell evenly, her rabbit tucked under her chin. For the first time in weeks, I could see her without the weight of hospital numbers in my head. I should have felt triumphant. I didn't. It was more like the silence after a storm. Too still, too fragile. The apartment looked the same as always, but everything inside me had shifted. The money was back, at least enough of it to keep us moving. The police were handling the rest. My parents and their kitchen could keep each other. I turned off the hallway light and leaned against the wall, letting the quiet press in. For now, that was all there was. Quiet and the promise of morning, and for the first time, that felt like enough. 2 years later, Ivy's lungs sound like music. No wheezing, no monitors, no midnight panic, just breath. Easy, quiet, perfect. She runs across the park now instead of hospital corridors. Every time she loves, it feels like the world is finally paying me back with interest. The investigation wrapped up the same year the surgery did. My parents and Samantha plead guilty to grand larceny and fraud. 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, full restitution. Ryan took a deal for accessory after the fact. He was the one who helped them move the money, convinced crypto was invisible. It wasn't. At one of the hearings, Ryan said he thought the transfers were authorized, that he'd just been helping them out. My mother's defense was, "We really needed the money." Between the two of them, it almost sounded like they'd stolen out of charity. In the end, the judge didn't buy it. They had to sell the house to pay it all back. Restitution, legal fees, the kitchen, they never got to enjoy. I got every dollar returned, plus interest. They got records in each other. I got peace. I haven't spoken to any of them since sentencing. No calls, no texts, no fake apologies, just silence. The best kind of inheritance, Ivy's healthy. I'm solvent. And for aunts, we're both breathing easy. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for